You ever wake up to the sound of a woman screaming legal threats at you across your own land before your coffee even kicks in? Yeah, that was my morning. The sun wasn't even high yet when Cordelia Hartwell, president of our local HOA and self-declared queen of the subdivision, marched up to my lake with a crowd and barked, "You have 24 hours to leave and never come back." She had this fat folder of papers, like it was the Constitution, waving it around for all to see, already sure she'd won. But what she didn't know, what nobody knew, was that tucked inside my old beat-up leather bag was the one thing that could flip this whole circus upside down, not just for her, but for every single neighbor in shouting distance. See, I'd been minding my business fishing at the lake. My granddad left me real quiet, real peaceful. The water was still sun bouncing off it like glass. Sometimes if I closed my eyes, I could almost hear Grandpa reminding me, "Be patient. Good things come to folks who wait." That peace, though, lasted exactly as long as it took Cordelia to show up with what looked like a traveling courtroom. 6 board members, 1 jumpy title company guy in a suit, and of course a full camera crew ready to blast my humiliation all over Facebook. She pointed at me like I was a criminal and started in, "Mr. Blackwood, you're trespassing. This lake is community property. You've ignored the rules long enough." Funny thing about HOA rules, they sound a lot like real law until you actually meet real law. And real law that morning arrived in a dusty sheriff's car. Sheriff Thompson got out all sighs and hat adjusting and said, "I heard there's a neighbor dispute. Folks, this is civil. Unless there's an actual crime, you gotta settle this in court, not in my driveway." You could see Cordelia's plan get a little wobbly right then, but she pressed on, shoving her official documents at the sheriff and anyone else who'd look. Now, I'd been calm this whole time, partly because Grandpa always said the loudest one in the room is usually the weakest, and partly because of the weight of that leather bag hitting my knee. My granddad gave me more than a lake. He gave me the playbook to protect it. So I said, "Nice and polite, ma'am, happy to look at your papers, but you might want to see mine first." Her laugh, pure performance. "What could you possibly have that a whole legal team missed?" She snorted. She had no clue. I glanced at the big parking lot the whole subdivision used. Every one of them had to cross it to get home. I grinned a little and said, "Sure hope everyone's drinking enough water in this heat. Wouldn't want the parking lot to get too crowded." I spotted old Barney Copperfield watching from his porch. He'd been Grandpa's best friend and the county court clerk for 40 years. Barney grinned like he'd already seen the end of the movie. Cordelia, though, kept at it, thinking she could steamroll me. She was even trying to get a TV interview set up, but I wasn't biting. I just played it like small talk, and that started to mess with her head. Channel 7 News showed up. Her plan was to humiliate me live. I stood up, dusted off my jeans, and said, "You're right, Mrs. Hartwell, this is serious. Property rights, community rules, they matter. But before you get everyone riled up, maybe check if you're working with the right facts." I flashed just enough of what was in my bag to rattle her. She saw it, and her face changed. The whole queen of the neighborhood act gone. She suddenly looked like someone who just realized maybe she'd picked the wrong fight. On my drive home, that bag on the seat next to me, I remembered Grandpa in his last days handing it to me. Ezra, he'd said, "Land doesn't belong to us. We belong to the land. Protect it, but do it the right way." And then, like it was nothing. "One day someone will try to take what's ours. You'll know what to do." Spread out on my kitchen table, the bag's contents looked like something out of a museum. A deed from 1892, faded but real red wax seal and all. Grandpa's great-granddad had been given the whole section of land around the lake by the federal government, plus every drop of water forever. The maps showed the parking lot, the roads, the whole neighborhood, all technically on my land. Nobody'd ever checked the old records. Phone rang. Barney, of course. "Saw the circus, son. You all right?" He chuckled. "That bag come in handy yet?" Turns out he and Grandpa had spent months at the courthouse making sure every inch was legally bulletproof. Then he dropped a bomb years ago. Grandpa bailed out Cordelia's own family farm during a drought, gave her dad money, never asked for it back. The irony, Cordelia now trying to steal from the family that saved hers. And get this, when the houses got built, they all assumed the water would just keep coming. Never thought to check who owned the ditch. Grandpa hadn't just left me land, he'd left me leverage. Next day, Cordelia showed up with her dream team, Maria Santos, a property document specialist, and Tom Bradley, county surveyor. She thought she was bringing a bazooka to a water gun fight. Maria checked my 1892 deed under a magnifying glass and announced, "This is real, and it predates anything the HOA can claim." Tom, the surveyor, piped up, "Mrs. Hartwell, my surveys say the original homestead covers way more than you told people, and the parking lot, that's not HOA land." You could see Cordelia crumble as Maria checked her papers, watermarks from the wrong decade ink that didn't match. These looked like modern fakes. The crowd went dead silent. Sheriff Thompson stepped up. "Ma'am, if these documents aren't real, we're talking about criminal charges." Cordelia tried to hold her ground, but her story broke. She burst into tears and blurted out the truth. Her husband was dying of cancer. The family was in debt. This whole scheme was a desperate attempt to save her house. You could feel the crowd shift. Suddenly, she wasn't just the villain anymore. She was desperate, scared human. But instead of ending the drama, exploded online. Cordelia spun the story, painted herself the victim, me the big bad landowner. Channel 7 ran it nonstop, showing families shut out of their lake. Never mind, I'd never once blocked anyone. But I had to play my cards. Legally. I posted a notice safety inspection Friday night. Parking lot closed by law for 1 hour. The only road home for 200 families blocked by the guy the HOA tried to kick out. Phones blew up. Cordelia brought out more cameras, a social media expert, the whole neighborhood yelling harassment. But this time the crowd was listening to Bradley and Maria, who were quietly explaining the truth. My truth. Then Channel 7's legal analyst Patricia Wells stepped in. The 1892 grant overrides everything else. Live on air. The tide turned and Cordelia called an emergency HOA meeting, her last shot at control. But Barney behind the scenes had called the state water office. The next morning, a judge from the state water court and a water engineer showed up. Judge Whitaker checked my deed. Federal homestead grant, senior water rights. Your family's claim is rock solid. The water engineer confirmed 3 neighborhoods, hundreds of homes, all depended on water that crossed my land. Cordelia arrived with her lawyer and news crews, but she looked defeated. When her lawyer tried to protest, Judge Whitaker shut it down. My papers were real. Cordelia's were full of holes. Then, right in front of everyone, Sheriff Thompson arrested Cordelia for fraud. She broke down begging, "I did it for my husband. We're losing everything." The crowd was shaken. How do you hate someone who's just trying to save their family? Still, she'd crossed the line. That night alone of the barn, I found a letter from Grandpa, his last lesson. Strength isn't about beating people. It's about building something that lasts for everyone. He'd taught me how to win, but more importantly, how to forgive and how to lead. The real question was, what was I going to do with all this power? When the community gathered for the inspection cameras everywhere, I walked to the gate with the keys in hand. I could have locked everyone out, cut the water, made their lives hell, and nobody could have stopped me. Cordelia stood up front, hollow-eyed, and pleaded, "Don't punish them for my mistakes." In that moment, I understood the true test. Use power for revenge or for something better. So I turned to the crowd and said I could close this gate, and by law you couldn't stop me. But that's not what this land is for. My grandfather taught me to lift people up, not tear them down. The gate stays open, but from now on we manage it right. Together. Judge Whitaker issued a temporary order confirming my rights and suggested a formal agreement. But I took it further. I proposed a community trust. I'd keep the legal title, but management would be shared resources, protected decisions made together. For the first time, Cordelia used my first name. She owned up, "I can't undo what I did, but if you're willing to do this, I want to help." Her transformation was real. She went from the villain to someone looking for redemption. 6 months later, just as we were healing, the luxury resort company swooped in with federal lawyers, threatened to wipe it all away in court. Their lawyer tried to intimidate us, but Cordelia, in a wild twist, stood up and exposed a $500,000 bribe offer they'd made her to betray us. That killed their case on the spot. Judge Whitaker, grinning now, laid out exactly why our trust was legal and protected. The corporate lawyers tucked tail and ran. As the sun rose over our lake, neighbors hugged. Former enemies became friends, and Cordelia was thanked not for her past, but for proving people can change. I looked around and saw exactly what Grandpa had wanted: a community stronger for having fought together, land and water richer for being shared. So let me ask you, if someone tried to steal your family's legacy, what would you do? Would you fight, forgive, or build something that lasts? Drop your thoughts below, because in the end, the real power isn't in the land, it's in the people who choose to do the right thing, even when it's the hardest choice of all.